The Chinese have been on a spending spree over the week-long National Day holiday. More than 780 million trips were made by Chinese tourists, a year-on-year rise of 8%, and tourism revenues reached over $90 billion. That's just in 7 days. Now, other sectors such as transport, retail, catering and entertainment also saw significant growth. Official figures show that despite the U.S.-China trade war, China's domestic demand is rapidly expanding, with consumption contributing to 60% to the economic growth in the first half of this year. So what's propelling such growth, with some calling for decoupling of U.S. and China? Is it wise to give up such a lucrative and ever-growing market? Joining me for the discussion here in the Beijing studio are Professor Teng, a U.S.-China Fulbright scholar based at New York University and Boston College, and Gong, Professor of Economics at the University of International Business and Economics. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. But let's just take a look at that impressive number again. As I said, according to China's Ministry of Culture and Tourism, during the 7-day period, more than 780 million domestic trips were made, an increase of 8% year-on-year, and revenue during the holiday reached $90 billion, an increase of 8.5%. So given the backdrop of the U.S. trade war, gentlemen, did anybody expect to see this kind of rise? By the way, do you think the rise was significant, was really so significant, Professor Teng?
Well, I think so. I think absolutely this is a significant rise because of this very holiday economy. I think the main factor contributing to this very rise is the expansion in terms of spending in the retailing business, for example, in dining, traveling, and entertaining business. And so, in a sense, these are the focus, almost the pillar. To me, is the tentpole sort of element that contributes to this great rise and also significance in terms of the expansion.
Well, I mean, holidays are always where people relax. They got nothing else to do but to spend and enjoy themselves. But 8% increase from year-on-year, or 8.5% year-on-year. These are the numbers that are catching my attention. Professor Gong, why do you think the jump is so high this year?
I mean, tourism is one form of consumption upgrade. And in old days, people, dine, wine during holidays, but more and more, the expenditures on these things are decreasing as a percentage of total expenditure, but expenditures on travel, for example, on tourism is increasing. People want to get to see more. People want to have some kind of experience. So, the tourism industry has been on the rise for a long, long time. So this trend is just unstoppable. I mean, the 8% increase this year is not surprising to me at all. And I think, sorry about this, Chinese people, Chinese consumers will continue to travel during weekends and during the holiday season. They will travel domestically as well as overseas.
But this is a... Yeah, sorry, Professor.
Well, policy-wise, for example, back in 1999, the Chinese government, for example, the State Council released this very directive, and in saying, encouraging consumers in this country, and especially the rising sections of the Chinese middle class, to travel and not stay put. I mean, back in the past, we all stayed put in home. I mean, we did our own stuff back home. But now, I mean, traveling with conditions improved. For example, transport conditions improved,
and also
with high-speed rail.
Yeah, they also travel in a better way, I think. In old days, we were riding these, very clumsy trains, but now it's all high-speed rail trains.
High-speed rail trains, and also going abroad, by the way. Every day there was almost 2 million people leaving the country over the past 7 days. So a total number of outbound trips in 7 days exceeded 7 million. That's an increase of 10% year-on-year. So to me, that just feels like there is a lot of money in the pockets of a lot of Chinese who want to see a lot of things, who want to have a lot of fun. Against the backdrop of the trade war, and if you watch the outside media, the Western media, you'll hear a lot of mixed voice, to put it very mildly, about the bad shape that the Chinese economy is in. So can these numbers say anything different?
Well, yes, please.
I can think of 2 points. First of all, I think the adverse impact of the trade war in terms of lost jobs, in terms of losses to businesses, are quite minimal in my opinion. It doesn't at least affect tourist numbers here. The numbers still be increasing. Another thing is, I think certainly affects tourism, Chinese tourism in the United States. The American tourism industry got to be salivating over these numbers. There could have been more people traveling to the United States, go to a theme parks in California,
and all that stuff.
And all that stuff, yeah. So, but these trips are not happening now. So I think, from the American side, they got to understand that the trade issue between the United States and China is not just about trading goods, not about just 300, 400 billion dollars of goods. There's also an aspect of service, and tourism is Chinese imports of services from the United States, and President Trump needs to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I think that the Chinese domestic market speaks volume. The size of this very market speaks volume for the economic growth. Think about China, this very large market that caters to almost 1.4 billion people, and with 700 or 400 million people being the middle class. I mean, think about these 400 million people on the road, traveling deep into the mountains, in the countryside, across the border into Vietnam, Thailand, and Laos. This is no longer the kind of a within city kind of a tourism. This is cross province. This is transnational tourism.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned some numbers. Let me give you some more from, again, China's Ministry of Commerce from October the 1st to 7th. The retail and catering sectors achieved sale of 1.5 trillion yuan. That is 213 billion US dollars. That's an increase of 8.5% year on year. And then revenues for movie theaters, KTVs, and theme parks in China increased more than 20%. Year on year. The national box office gross revenue exceeded 4 billion yuan, that's 560 million US dollars, and that is also more than double the same period of last year, also setting a record for the Golden Week box office. What explains the 20% increase on theme parks, movie theaters, and more than doubling of the national box office?
Once again, it reflects this pent-up demand on the part of this middle class. I mean, demanding for better entertainment, better tourist quality, better service qualities, better tourist experiences. And think about movie theaters, for example. They are expecting more production value, high production value films, such as My Country, My People. The Chinese Captain, which you've seen,
I watched that.
Right? I mean,
I contributed 40 yuan.
Right. I mean, all these great films and flicks are actually now even better than good. I mean, of all these produced back in the past few years.
Well, definitely that shows that there is a lot of consumption power there. But on the other hand, are people really so happy to spend because they have a lot of money, they're very confident about their future, or because they say, okay, I got nowhere else to spend my money, I might as well go to a movie? What does that say? Because the Chinese economy obviously is not doing 8.5%, it's doing 6% or 6.5 maximum. How come the holiday expenditure is going so much better?
Yeah, that's also a puzzle to me. I mean, if you look at the expenditures on automobiles, for example, it's not doing so well these days. And on real estate, it's also the numbers not doing so well. But it appears that people are still willing to spend money on other things.
Maybe it's the lipstick economy. When people are not feeling so good, when the economy is not doing very, people go and buy lipstick, to make themselves feel better. Is there a factor there?
Well, I think that you might be right.
I'm talking about women, by the way.
Well, these days I think some
women hold up half the sky, right? I mean,
but in any case, I think there's some truth in what you're saying. But I think overall, the people's pockets are still quite deep, and they're still willing to spend money on the things they like. And if you look at the total expenditures on a per capita basis, it's actually not a huge amount of money, in my opinion, compared to people's salaries, their annual incomes. It's a moderate amount, something that people can carve out very easily. It's not such a big amount, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the international media, and sometimes I roam just to be amused or to be shocked sometimes. For instance, you see a lot of media reports. For instance, it says, this one on South China Morning Post, my prediction, the coming collapse of China's Ponzi scheme economy. And then another article by South China Morning Post, trade war raises the specter of a China collapse. Bloomberg, forget the trade war, China is already in crisis. 7 signs of Chinese economy is headed for collapse. 10 new signs of China's imminent economic collapse 2019. Is China's economic collapse good for the U.S.? We just pick some random headlines, but it seems that these kind of series is always there. Should we give them a serious consideration?
Well, I mean, the coming collapse of China theory has been collapsing for some time. I mean, that can be traced back to this guy, this lawyer in Los Angeles.
Gordon Chang.
Gordon Chang. He wrote this book, Coming Collapse of China. Right. He has been proven wrong time and time again. That is just embarrassing to talk about.
How come these kind of headlines just, you know, and they love it, the 10 signs or 10 new signs, as if, you know, it's I don't know.
I think it's, you know, people just don't give up, you know, predicting these things if they really believe in it. But it's proven wrong and wrong again. I mean, the resilience of the Chinese economy is just unbelievable. And, you know, time and time again, this economy has always been coming back, even during very difficult times. So, you know, this grand theory of the grand collapse of China's economy is just total nonsense. You know, it's not going to happen.
I think once again, it's based on bias and hubris. I mean, the Western economists basically were so very ignorant of what is going on here in China. And think about the very domestic market that is playing this very key role in the revival of this Chinese economy ever since, let's say, 2008 or 2016. And so, in a sense, I think economic theories don't make sense here in China.
Western economic theories.
Especially those in the West.
Well, they're hardly theories.
They should touch bases here.
These are false prophecies, you know, false prophecies. Not theories.
So what is giving, if you can, in very simple words, what is giving Chinese economy the kind of resilience that it has shown? I mean, you talked about 700 million middle class, for instance, and the consumption obviously taking up an ever-growing role of the Chinese economy. Exactly what is it, Professor?
I can think of a couple of reasons. One is the income.
Don't give too many. I don't have so much time left.
One is the asset effect. In other words, people's assets are still pretty strong and they still have money they're willing to spend. Second, I think, is the you know, the income that has been accumulated over the years, that they're willing to spend these savings. China's overall debt level is pretty low at the individual level, and their penchant for expenditures is historically has been pretty low, but now it's increasing.
And social policy-wise, I think the Chinese government has also promulgated this very social welfare system. And right now, on my table back home, there's a booklet given by the Chinese government saying that welfare money out there. I mean, there is already a safety net out there, and so that's why consumers spend safely, because this very safety net.
And maybe a touch of confidence that things
That's
will
right.
work
That injected the whole shot in the arm.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much to my guests, Professor Teng Jimeng, a U.S.-China Fulbright scholar based at New York University and Boston College, and Gong, Professor of Economics at the University of International Business and Economics.